Okay, dear friends, this is the fourth meeting of Megillat Esther. I hope I can finish today. I might not. Then I have to think whether to make another meeting or not. I'm not sure. Haven't decided yet. But what I'll do though is two things. First, I want to show you the sources to what I was saying about Mordechai and Esther and how they are named after Babylonian gods. There's a very important book that was written in the 1970s. For the second time, it was actually written before that. The Ancient Near East by a fellow by the name of James Pritchard, documents that relate to the Bible from Mesopotamia, from other places. Just want to read you two things. This is an inscription from the time of Cyrus, first king of Persia. And it was an inscription found on a clay barrel. This is in his book on page 206. Okay, I'll just read a little bit. The worship of Marduk, the king of the gods, he changed into abomination. Daily he used to do evil against Marduk's city. He tormented its inhabitants. Marduk was actually a Babylonian god. Okay, Cyrus, by conquering Babylonia, is actually doing problems to the Babylonian god, right? And the Babylonian god's city, etc. It's interesting. It seems that Marduk and Ishtar are actually Babylonian gods, not even Persian, which is interesting, I think here. And this goes on and on. But Marduk, who does care for, on the account of the fact that the sanctuaries of their settlements were in ruins, or the inhabitants of Sumer and Akkad became like the living dead, etc., etc. Now let me show you another one. This one's about Ishtar. And these are hymns, Akkadian hymns, also from the Babylonian period. So in this hymn it says, praise the goddess, the awesome goddess, the mistress of the peoples. Praise Ishtar, the most awesome of the goddesses. I'll just read a little bit here. She is their queen. They continually cause her commands to be executed. All of them bow before her. They receive her light before her. Women and men indeed revere her. In their assembly, her word is powerful. It is dominating, etc., etc. Indeed, they occupy the throne together in the divine chamber, the dwelling of joy. Before them, the gods take their places, etc. So basically, Ishtar and Marduk are very powerful Babylonian gods. And Ishtar is called the queen. So whoever called Mordechai and Esther, okay, knew exactly what they were doing in the narrative. This is not a mistake. It's a manipulation of the text. And the question is, what is the narrative trying to say? Now, we know that Jews who were living in the diaspora, which once upon a time was called exile, used always local names. That's not unusual, okay? Esther's real name is Hadassah, as we know, because it says so in Megillat Esther. She has a Hebrew name. Mordechai, we don't even know his Hebrew name. The Talmud says, the Talmud darshans Mordechai's name and says Mordechai is like in Aramaic, one of the incenses of the Ketoret was called Mor Dror, which is translated Maridachya. So the Talmud says that Mordechai relates to the Ketoret, the incense that was brought on the altar, his name. Of course, we all know that Mordechai comes from Marduk, but the very fact that the Talmud is saying this is also an interesting interpretation. That means that both Mordechai and Esther's names have to do with incense, because Hadassah is also the myrtle branch is also a very fragrant branch. Today in my 1 o'clock talk, I explained that the meaning of this is probably that, or at least the way it's interpreted by Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, one of the famous Hasidic writers and a relative of Elimelech of Lizhansk. So he basically says when you look at the primordial sin of Adam and Eve in the garden, out of the 5 senses, 4 of them are in use. Because the woman listens to the snake, and after she listens to the snake, it says, "Vatere haisha ki tov ha'etz lamachal." She saw that the tree was good to eat. V'ta'ava u'la'inayim, and it actually looks very aesthetically beautiful. V'nechmad ha'etz lahaskil, and it's very good even to think about. So you have their hearing and seeing, and it says, "Vatikach mi piryo," and she took its fruit, that's touch. Vatochal, and she ate it, that's taste. Vatiten gam lisha, and then she gave to Adam as well. So you have 4 of the senses in use: sight, hearing, taste, and touch. What is missing? Smell.
And one can argue that in order to taste, you have to smell. Like if you close your nose, you won't taste anything.
That could be, especially if you get COVID-19. It takes away your sense of smell, which affects your taste. Some people, it takes away both. They're related. But the point is that the text doesn't say smell.
Okay.
Because of that, it's understood that the sense of smell was not tarnished by the primordial sin. And interestingly enough, in Isaiah chapter 11, when it's talking about the futuristic Messiah from the son of David, so it says, "B'haricho b'yirat Hashem," he will smell the fear of God. Lo l'marei einav yishpot, he will not judge by what he sees by his eyes. V'lo l'mishma'o oznav yochiach, and he will not rebuke from what he hears. He will smell people's fear of God. Okay, why smell? That's the untarnished sense. The Talmud says in Havdalah, why do we have to smell incense Havdalah? Even though actually we use all the 5 senses Havdalah. But the Talmud says, why do we have to smell? Because the Talmud says the sense of smell is the only thing that the nefesh, that the soul benefits from. Not taste, but it can actually benefit from smell. Eating and drinking doesn't do anything for the soul, only for the body. But smell can help the body, can help the soul, which is interesting. But so anyhow, so you have this interesting. So Mordechai and Esther, who actually saved the Jews from destruction in this Persian Babylonian Empire, both of their names relate to the idea of the sense of smell, which, if Elimelech Adinov is correct, looks like it's on purpose. At least the commentary of the Talmud, making Mordechai's name also the sense of smell, would make it look like an interpretation. Putting that aside, I mentioned also that we have the book of Esther is named after the woman. She's named after Esther and not named after Mordechai.
Mhm.
And I also mentioned that we have a book in the Apocrypha named after a woman called Judith.
Mhm.
Both of these books are written under the Persian Empire. Now, in Josephus' book Antiquities, I have the Hebrew one here, but actually online I could probably show you the English, but I'll just read it for you. This is it's book 11 of Josephus' Antiquities. And it starts with Cyrus, the first king of Persia, making his famous declaration that the Jews can now go back to Zion. The declaration, which is at the end of the book of Divrei Hayamim, the book of Chronicles, and that's really the way the book of Ezra also begins. This is in the first year of Koresh, which is the 70th year since the beginning of the Babylonian exile. Because remember, according to Jeremiah, the Babylonian exile is 70 years. So everything has to work out. So I'm jumping now to chapter 3. After Koresh makes his famous declaration, he has a little party in the palace. And different people are talking at the party. And they're introducing the different people who are talking at the party. But they're talking about now, so it says, actually talks about, so this is after. In the first year of Darius the king, I'm not sure how this works exactly. Is it Koresh or is it Darius? Okay, I need to see this a little bit more carefully. He quotes from Ezra here. Ezra also talks about Darius. This has to be checked out exactly historically. But anyhow, it says in the first year of Darius, he was sitting on his bed, I guess on his throne, and okay, let me just bring this for you. He wanted to give a prize. He wanted to give a prize to whoever of his wise men would say the smartest thing. And then they describe what he's going to give them, different fancy garments, and all different types of prizes. He wanted to know whether the power of wine is the most powerful, or the power of kings is the most powerful, or the power of women was the most powerful. He was wondering. And as I said last time, in the Persian Empire, there is this belief in the feminine mystique as a powerful influence. As I said, they're not like the Greeks. The Greeks were misogynists. They belittled women. But the Persians saw women as being very powerful and very tricky. So which one of the three? So he turns to different wise people. So the first wise person talked about why wine is a very powerful stimulant and how it can affect people, and I'm jumping over that. Then after the first one finished and talked about the power of wine, the second one talked about the power of kings. And he said, everybody knows that kings can control people and they force people to do their will. And if not, there is punishment and they start wars, and he goes on and on. And then when the second one stopped, the third one spoke. And who is the third one, according to Josephus? It's Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel, if you probably know, is the one who came together with Ezra to Judea to help build the temple. So all of a sudden, Zerubbabel is this person who is close to Darius the king. And he's now giving an oration about the power of women. And he says, it's true, wine is strong, kings are courageous, and everybody has to abide by them. But the women are the ones who can overcome all of them. Shekeni says, look, who brought you the king? Who brought you into the world if not a woman? They're the ones who bring the men into the world in the first place. They're the ones who bring us the wine. And in fact, everything comes from them. Who makes the clothing, who crochets it, who sets up the house. There's nothing you can do without a woman. Because after we have riches of gold and silver and all these other things, and we see a pretty woman, we put everything apart and we start running after them. That's what he writes. I'm sort of paraphrasing. And we leave our parents who brought us up and we go to live with a woman. So when you think of the power of the women and everything men do in order to sustain them, and even yourself, the king, who is the master of all, I see that you have your concubine, whatever her name is, who's the daughter of whatever, and she takes your crown off you and puts it on her head, etc., etc. Anyhow, in the end, he wins the prize, and everybody agrees with Zerubbabel about the power of women. Now, this is just a truism in Persian culture. So it's not by accident that the book of Esther is named after a woman who manipulates all these powerful men and gets her way. This is a theme in general in Persian culture. Just like in the book of Judith, this Judith is able to manipulate Holofernes and eventually kill him, just like Esther kills Haman, right? These are not just manipulative women, they are women who are lethal, okay? And all that is part of the same theme of the Persian Empire. This doesn't change, by the way, the meaning of the book of Esther, but it puts it into context, into literary context, that these themes are themes that are running around in the Persian Empire, and it just puts things into context. The only question is, what is the meaning of all the themes? You have to put them together. Because remember, the person writing the book is living, it seems, at the time of the Persian Babylonian culture. I would say this is not a late book based on that. It's written by somebody who's living in that culture, and the themes themselves prove it. So then the question is, how are they manipulating the themes of this culture in order to prove their point? But if you see things that look, the first question you have to ask about a book like this is try to understand it within the situation in which it's being written, and what the author and how the author is using those ingredients when they're making their package of this book. So let's get back to the book of Esther. And here it is in front of you. So in chapter 1, if you remember, I said last time, there is, okay, where did it go? I'm not sure where it went now. Hold on, it's got to be, oh, here it is, okay. Okay, so the last time we saw that if you remember, the king makes a banquet, first for 180 days and then 7 days. And as I said, Ahasuerus, I'm assuming, is a very smart king. He's doing everything possible to consolidate his empire. According to the Malbim, he actually is not from royal background and therefore had a need to marry Vashti, who was from royal background, Babylonian background. But the truth is that even if he was from royal background, he's not from Babylonian royal background. He has not been king for a very long time, and he still needs to show the people who are used to the Babylonian kingdom that he has royal blood in the family, and therefore Vashti, the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, is the right person to marry. So the first banquet is basically to win the people over. The second banquet of the 7 days is to win over the aristocracy living in Shushan, the ones who are very close to him, and he has to be very careful with. So these are not banquets in which you have a king who is just wine happy. These are calculated political affairs in which he is trying to win over representatives of the people from all the provinces, and also, in addition, and that's probably the one he attended, the 7-day one, where he's trying to win over the VIPs from Shushan, who were living there at the time. When Vashti refuses, so the king is in a real predicament, and the way Memuchan is able to overcome this, because Vashti is basically using muscle to show that she is the boss, and to overcome this weakness, they create the law, what we would call the overriding Vashti law. We've had that in the Israeli parliament at least once, if not twice, where somebody created a law and it was just in order for a certain lawmaker to get off the hook. So that's exactly what's happening here. Basically, Ahasuerus needs a law which is going to overcome Vashti's attempt to show muscle. And the way he overcomes the law is by passing a law, which people don't even realize why the law is passed. The law says that the man controls everything in the house, which means possessions, land, titles. Okay, I'm sure that was written in the small print. And it also, in order for everybody to agree, part of the law also said that all nations can speak in their own language. In other words, we're going to give all the ethnicities some freebies. something to make their national pride, stroke their national pride, as long as they don't read the small print of the other stuff that says that the man controls everything that the woman owns, title, land, property. And of course, now that the man controls title, land, property, Achashverosh controls the title, the royal title now of Vashti. So even if Vashti is gone, it still belongs to him according to the law of the land that was passed. So this is actually a real political manipulation, what we call in Hebrew chok okef Vashti, a law which is basically to subdue Vashti without mentioning her name and without saying that this is the reason for the law, and making the law seem like something that makes sense. The man's in charge of the household, right? Which man would disagree with that? And since in Persia, even though the women might be smart, the men do control the household anyhow, it looks pretty redundant, so nobody really understands what's going on and why he's passing that very strange looking law. And that is chapter 1. Chapter 2. Afterwards, the anger of King Ahasuerus subsided, and he thought about Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed against her. Okay, it was a general decree, but it was a Vashti decree. And then the king's servants who attended said, "Let beautiful young virgins be brought out to your majesties. Let your majesty appoint officers in every province of your realm to assemble all these beautiful young virgins at the fortress of Shushan." It's not fortress. I don't know why they say that. It's like the capital city. But I guess since kings lived in fortresses, it could be that it was a fortified city. Under the harem, under Haggai, the king's eunuch, guardian of the women. And let the maiden who pleases the majesty be queen instead of Vashti. And the proposal pleased the king, and he acted on it. And in the fortress of Shushan, there was a Jew by the name of Mordechai, the son of Yair, Shimi, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. And this Mordechai was exiled from Jerusalem in the group that was exiled into the exile with King Yechoniah of Judea, and driven into exile by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babel, who was before the Persians. And he was a foster father to Hadassah, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had never had a father or mother. The maiden was shapely and beautiful, and her father and mother died, and Mordechai adopted her as his own daughter. And when the king's order and edict was proclaimed and many girls assembled, Esther too was taken into the king's palace. By the way, you can see the fact that she was taken, she didn't volunteer. It says in Hebrew, Vatila kach Esther. Esther was really not interested in being involved, but Esther was taken by force, by Haggai. Somebody obviously heard about him. The girl pleased him and won his favor. We're talking about Haggai, who was the guy in charge of getting the women. He hastened to furnish her with cosmetics and maidens from the king's palace. He treated her and the maidens with special kindness. Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred, for Mordecai told her not to do that. And every day Mordecai would walk about in front of the court to learn how Esther was faring and what was happening. And each girl's turn came to King Ahasuerus at the end of 12 months, with the treatment prescribed for every woman. 6 months with oils of myrrh, 6 months with perfume. By the way, according to the Talmud, Mordechai is from the word myrrh. And after that, the girl would go to the king, whatever she asked, she would be given to take with her. She would go in the evening, leave in the morning. And the guy in charge was Shashgaz, another of the king's eunuchs. And she would not go again to the king unless the king wanted her again and summoned her. When the turn for Esther came, the son of Abichail, who was the uncle of Mordechai, daughter of Abichail, was the uncle of Mordechai. It sounds like they're cousins according to this, even though the Talmud says she was a niece, who adopted her as a daughter to go to the king. She didn't ask for anything. But what Haggai, the king's eunuch, guardian of the women, advised. In other words, she wouldn't really win. She didn't want to win the contest. I remember there was an interview with Gal Gadot one time. She said when they took her to the Miss Israel contest, she didn't want to win. So she didn't actually put on makeup. And, after she won the Miss Israel, she didn't want to win the Miss Universe. So she purposely did things to make sure she wouldn't win. So something like this is with Esther. but for some strange reason, she wins the admiration of all who saw her. And Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in the 10th month in the royal palace, which was the month of Tevet, which is one of the months that we have a fast day, in the 7th year of the reign. And the king loved Esther more than other women. She won his grace from all the others, and he set a royal diadem on her head instead of Vashti. And the king made a banquet. The banquet of Esther proclaimed a remission of taxes for the provinces, etc. Why? If I am correct that Ahasuerus is a wise king, what is he doing? Okay, it's true. Donald Trump used to be involved in the beauty pageants before he was president, so maybe it helps becoming important. But Ahasuerus, he's already king. What does he need this for? And besides, there's no television. So what's he doing? What does he need all these women for? And why does he have to gather them? Why a contest? I'll tell you why. Of course, it's hypothesis, but Ahasuerus is still trying to win the people over. He's already taken care of Vashti. That part's over. Now he just has to continue in his desire to get the people closer to him. The first thing was, as I said, all the leadership with the 180-day festival and then the 7-day one, which was more important even for him. And now he wants to get the people behind him by doing something very populistic. There's no queen. He's already got the title from Vashti. So Ahasuerus has an ingenious idea. Since I actually don't need a queen now, because I have the title, and Vashti's out of the picture, let's do something to get all the people behind me. How do you do it? There's a problem. Well, you make a contest. The queen will come from all the provinces. Everybody can send their delegate of who they want to be the queen. It's like a democracy, okay? Now, the queen is very powerful. She's the one who's closest to the king. And the king is basically saying, I'm willing to take my queen from any province. All you guys are equal. I don't care if you're India or Ethiopia or Persia or Babylonia. All you guys are worth being my queen. That's a big statement, by the way, by a king. Being Persian, you would think he would say, look, my queen should be Persian, but everybody else, don't be offended. That's not what he's saying. He's very liberal-minded. My queen, Vashti, what was, she was Babylonian. Forget about those guys. I'm taking a queen, any one of the provinces, and any one of you 128 provinces, you can send out your delegate. Tell me which one you want to be the queen, and I will consider it. And we'll have a little contest. And at this contest, there will be delegations from all 128 states, and they have to vote for the queen, and the most votes, that's the one I'm going to marry. Okay? This is ingenious. It's because he doesn't need the queen for the title anymore. Let's have a queen that everybody wants. She'll be popular. Okay? Why not? Now, Mordechai realizes that Esther was taken. So he says, okay, I'm going to be more religious than the book appears to be. Mordechai's probably thinking, this is a sign from above, because Esther really didn't want this. So let's think for a moment. If Esther needs to be queen for whatever reason, I'm going to help her. He says to Esther, Esther, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you what not to do. Don't tell them where you come from. Okay. How does that help? The Talmud is very, I would say, has interesting statements about this. The Talmud says that Esther was not necessarily good looking. Even actually in the book of Esther, it says she was, but the Talmud says not necessarily. They said, Chutz Chesed, she had divine grace helping her out. But I will say what I think. In my opinion, what helped her out was Mordecai's advice. Because let's just think for a moment. You have this beauty pageant from 128 states, and every one of those states wants their delegate to be the queen because, hopefully she'll do a couple of nice things for the state, maybe more than a few. So the pageant starts. Miss Ethiopia is the first one to walk out. All the Ethiopians are clapping, yay, yay, yay. All the other 127 are saying boo, right? Then Miss India goes out. All the ones from India, yay. All the other 127 states, boo. Okay. Then the next one goes out. I don't know how far he got in his. Miss Egypt goes out, and Miss Syria goes out, whatever. And those countries, those provinces are all yang, and everybody else is boo. Then Esther goes out. Nobody knows where she comes from. Okay. Nobody knows who she is. Okay. It's not clear. She looks a little bit Persian. She looks a little bit Middle Eastern. She looks a little bit this, a little bit that. And you know what? Everybody's confused. Nobody says yay, but nobody says boo. Because they don't even know where she's from. And Achashverosh looks and he says, hey, I didn't hear much booing on this woman. Maybe there's something about her, okay? Because people think, Esther is very evasive. And somehow she gets everybody to think that she might be from their province because nobody knows where she came from. Remember, she didn't volunteer to come. She was not an official delegate. She was taken by this Haggai guy. So I think that the reason why Esther was taken is Achashverosh realized people seem to like her. That's good for me. And so he takes her. Okay? I know I'm killing the whole contest, but as you know, even the American beauty pageants and all these other beauty pageants, they're really about who's politically correct to take. So one year they'll take somebody who's deaf, and another year they'll take a Sunday school teacher, and another, they do those things. So this is basically what's happening here. He wants somebody who he feels that more or less the people are going to stand behind, that not too many people are going to boo, and becomes Esther. But he has no idea who this Esther is. She is part of the same mystique of the Persian mystique. There are some weird parts. And then, of course, the king proclaims a remission of taxes. So everybody's very happy with Esther after that. Okay, let the king have Esther, drop the taxes, not a problem. Then you have, of course, a very strange story here. A second time, the virgins are there, Mordecai's in the palace gate. It's a very strange line. There are some things to be said about it. What is this second thing? Is it second place runners? Not clear exactly what it is. Let's put that aside. Esther did not reveal her kindred, as Mordecai said. And Esther obeyed Mordecai's bidding. And when Mordecai was sitting in the palace, two fellows by the name of Bigtan Vateresh, of the king's eunuchs, guarding the threshold, plotted against Achashverosh to kill him. Mordecai learns about this, tells it to Esther. Esther reports it to the king in Mordecai's name. The matter was investigated, found to be so, and the two were impaled. By the way, that's what Dracula used to do, Vlad Tepes. This was recorded in the book of Annals of the instance of the king. And in chapter 3, right after that, Achashverosh promotes Haman. Why after that does Achashverosh promote Haman? And this will probably be the last thing I'll say today, because Achashverosh, as I said, was a wise king. And he figured he had two possibilities: to be loved by everybody or to be feared by everybody. And he decides to go by the road to be loved by everybody. So first he has this amazing party to get all the heads from the various provinces to come to the palace to feel that he is their king. And then for the 7 days, all the VIPs, where he actually mingles with them to make sure they're on his side. The second thing he does, once Vashti's out of the picture, is this beauty pageant where every province can actually put forward a candidate to be the queen to show that in his eyes, all the provinces are equal and they're all worthy of being the queen. And this is very successful marketing technique to get to the people. And I'm sure it was in the newspapers in every province daily. How's our girl doing? What are our chances? Maybe because of that, even after he picked the queen, he kept it going for a while because, hey, everybody's reading about the king. Okay, you can have runners up and the runners up and what they get, and we'll have taxes based, drop for this and for that. So basically, this is a marketing technique, and Ahasuerus thinks he has it all put together until the assassination plot. The end of chapter 2 with the assassination plot is a traumatic experience for Ahasuerus. He realizes these two eunuchs, his own guards in the palace, are plotting against him. This is not a plot in a void. This is a plot which is based on people very close to him who want to get him. He can't take a chance. This is really dangerous. So Ahasuerus realizes, I cannot be the open-minded, liberal, loving king anymore because it's going to be my end. There's somebody who doesn't want me here. I have to switch. And at that moment, he decides, I'm not the John F. Kennedy going with open Cadillacs and kissing babies anymore. I'm going to be the Stalin. If they can't love me, they're going to fear me. And at this point, as all dictators do, they get doubles. There were a few Stalins who used to hang out there. There were a few Saddam Husseins who looked just like him. And they would go around waving in the open automobiles. And that's exactly what Ahasuerus does. Haman is his right-hand man. Ahasuerus, from now on, never leaves that palace. And anybody who has to see him, if they were not summoned, then he's going to put out the scepter. If that scepter is not out, that guy is going to be hung within minutes. Okay? It's no funny business. No tolerance, zero tolerance. Ahasuerus overnight becomes a dictator. Haman is now running the kingdom. And of course, there's only one thing that Ahasuerus at this point wants from Haman. Can you guess? All he needs from Haman is just one thing. What's the one thing? Haman can do whatever he wants. Remember, Haman in chapter 3 is going to say, there's a people and their laws are different than our laws, and it's really not worth for the king to have that people. Let me pay you some money and take care of them. Is that okay? Ahasuerus says, you've got my stamp, you got my ring and my stamp. That's okay. Whatever you want to do, Haman, that's okay. Except for, what is the one thing that Ahasuerus wants from Haman? Just one thing.
Loyalty.
Israel, can you figure it out? What's the one word that he needs from Haman?
Loyalty, I suppose.
That's it. Very good. You're a mind reader. Loyalty. That's all he wants. Eventually, Esther, who knows this very well, she's going to use that against Haman. But yes, all the king wants from Haman is total loyalty. Just keep me on this throne and keep me alive. Do whatever it takes. I am now the dictator of fear, and now I just got to stay on the throne. That's how everything is going to continue from now on. And to quote, I don't know, Al Capone, it's not personal. So that's the way you have to understand it from chapter 3 on. But by the way, it'll switch again. Because remember, in politics, as you know, people can switch parties very easily, depending on circumstances. So Achashverosh is a political animal, and he understands. But in chapter 3, Haman, he's now the dictator. He doesn't leave the palace. Haman does the dirty work. Whatever Haman does, it's not personal. Achashverosh has nothing against the Jews. In fact, Haman didn't even tell him he was the Jews at that point. It's like whoever they are, it doesn't matter. Just you do the work. Okay, so we'll hold it now, but I just wanted you to